my mentor, my esteemed professor from back in the day in the University of Hawaii, the guy that got me into uh, uh, this industry. And I'm taking his time, and I appreciate him giving the time to try to introduce you to him personally, and what he's meant to me and what he's meant to the company and to our product. Uh, but you're going to get an opportunity again to know him and his background, and you'll see the depth of thought that's went into the methodology. It's really what we launched this TV channel for. Since we know each other, we're going to make it very informal. I'm just going to ask him some questions. I'm going to allow him to talk. You'll see me, because any one of these questions, with his depth of knowledge, he could talk the entire duration about any one question. You'll have the opportunity from our network to learn more. You tell us what you would like to know more about. You're allowed to contact Ted directly, even if you have a further question about it. But what we want to do is introduce you to sort of key tenets of the methodology. So Ted, again, thank you for taking the time this morning. And so the sort of the first question is, I know you went to law school. I think your father and even maybe grandfather was in law. So talk to him about how you got into law and how you evolved from it.
Okay. Well, you're right. My father was a prominent attorney in Newark, New Jersey in the 1920s, 1930s. He was an extreme conservative right-wing Republican. He pioneered in workman's comp law, which was new in the 1930s. And I would say upper middle class lifestyle. And this is during the Great Depression and into the Second World War. And he had an office building downtown, office building downtown Newark. And I never ever thought about what my future was going to be. He had it all planned out. He was investing in me to take his practice. He had me late in life. He was around 43. And he probably figured by the time I was going to become a lawyer, he'd retire. An attorney, he'd retire. So he was a bit of a cheapskate, actually. And he wouldn't let me go to Rutgers down in New Brunswick. He made me go to Rutgers in Newark. I did my undergraduate work as a history major. And they had a program where after you finished 3 years, if you took all of your major requirement, your electives for your fourth year could be first year in law school. And if you passed the first year of law school, which at that time was hardly any guarantee, the very first day in law school, the dean would look at you, and this I'm sure was nationwide, would say, look to your left and look to your right. Come June, one of you won't be in law school anymore. And about a third dropped out or flunked out every year. And that's the way it worked with my class, and that's the way it worked in every law school. And they also told you, we're not here to teach you the law. We're here to teach you to think like a lawyer. That is still true today. Many of my students have gone on to become attorneys. I am in touch with many of them online, Facebook, and we continue to talk about the law, the legal system. I'm in emails with many of my former students from the University of Hawaii, Auburn University, and NYU. And these are all places I spent time as full-time faculty. And so I have a very deep root in the law. So when you hear me talking against the law and the legal profession, that's what I'm talking against. The legal profession in general and the people who
Absolutely.
It's hierarchical to the max. And there are many, many different kinds of lawyers. All of my best friends in life are attorneys, at this age, pretty much. But they were at the top of their profession, and all of them are great guys. So they're my best friends, they're great guys, and they're successful attorneys, all made in the millions. So I was the one who dropped out. I wanted to leave the law because it just somehow rubbed me the wrong way. So, first of all, I despised law school. I mean, to me, every minute of it was torture. I hate reading legal cases and legal rhetoric. I mean, long, complicated, truncated. It's just obtuse, opaque, whatever word you want. It's done intentionally to make sure that the general layperson will be totally turned off to it and will have to look to lawyers for their help in resolving conflicts. I mean, America is the most litigious, and you can go to court to resolve disputes, society in the world. Nobody comes close to us. Most societies, like take China. China, everything is mediated. And I'll talk more about what mediation is a little bit down the line, but lawyers have made great inroads into China since this great revisionism by Deng Xiaoping and its globalization, and having to deal with international commerce. And they've adopted more legal ways of approaching everything so that they can resolve commercial disputes. And that's kind of trickled down to also solving marital disputes and interpersonal disputes and disputes between the public and the government. They go through courts much more, and there are probably 10 to 100 times more lawyers in China today than there were 40 years ago. But 40 years ago, say 1980, where America had 1 million lawyers for a population of about 300 million, China had about 100,000 lawyers for a population of over 1 billion. Now that's kind of modified, but China is still a society that relies mostly on mediation to resolve interpersonal disputes, like domestic disputes, neighbor disputes, and things like that. Japan is another society that is like that as well, because they both have Buddhist roots, and the object in a dispute is to come to some sort of a harmonious agreement where both sides feel okay about it. In Japan, for example, they are reluctant to go to courts and to win a legal case because they realize that if they win, that the loser's side has disgraced its ancestors. That's very big in Japan, ancestry and making your ancestors proud of you. I mean, that's a totally alien concept to us in America, but that's the way it is in Japan. So they don't want to win a case against somebody. They want to resolve the dispute so both sides can save face. So when we talk about America, we have this adversarial system that we've been born into. And it's a system of win-lose, individual against individual. And the winner is prize, the loser, tough luck. And that's what you learn in law school. To think like a lawyer is to learn a system that produces a winner. And the winner, supposedly, is the one who has been served by justice. The loser, of course, is also justly the loser and doesn't feel good about it. And it, in a sense, maintains hostility between the parties. So even say in a quote successful divorce, let's say a woman, and when I went to law school, a woman always lost, and the man always won. Now it's kind of reversed. You talk to guys who've been divorced a couple of times, and they're very make a lot of money, but they're broke because the woman's got all the property and the kids and everything else. So now it's the man complaining about it. Well, did I want to be part of that system? Well, I mean, my personality really was that of a lawyer. I was a very put-down, argumentative sort of fellow when I went to law school. So, I mean, it kind of fit my personality, but somehow it didn't suit my soul. I just felt very uncomfortable with the language and the elitism and the fact that all my fellow law students, all they ever talked about was using the law to get money, to get power, and to get status. And those are three things I wasn't interested in. I wasn't interested in getting power or making money, spending my life making money, or status. I mean, it's just the way I am personally. So there's a real disconnect between me and the legal system. I did learn to think like a lawyer since I'm pretty close to the top of my class. And, I studied, it's a 7-day a week, 12-hour a day job as a lawyer. I mean, whether you work for a corporation or yourself, you don't take time off. I mean, you live it. It's a lifestyle. And
I mean, this is, you and I have had, we've known each other 35 years. We've had a lot of discussions, and even today, I'm picking up stuff from you that I haven't heard, and I surely don't want to put words in your mouth. But I don't say that you used the word brainwashing, but you were talking about going to law school and as you introduced, what you went through. You said something once in my memory, and if I'm wrong, obviously I want to misrepresent it. So like when you were at Auburn, they didn't have a law school, and you thought that this, a program might be to get younger people at a right age to teach them this stuff. That even if they went on to law school, you'd hit them before they sort of got brainwashed. Two things that you said that I kept thinking about and knowing you, the excitement of knowing you, is when I was in the Navy, I was in boot camp on one side of the bay in San Diego, and the Marines were on the other side of the bay. And they were there a couple of weeks longer than I was, but not, I think it was like 12 weeks or 9 weeks to 14 weeks or something like that. But when the Marines came out of boot camp, they were killers, right? They were just like, send me home in a wooden box. And I was like, send me home on United Airlines with a cocktail in my hand. I'll fight for my country, but I don't really want to die. They're like, "Ooh." So they sort of got brainwashed. And I was scared when I was at University of Hawaii, and the way you touched my life was, I was like, I don't think I want to go either, because I don't want to do that, right? And when you mention these other countries and they go about it, the other thing I thought about, I didn't know the term restorative justice. And I don't want to use this video as you're introducing the TEDR methodology and yourself to our TV channel watchers. I want to bring up, what I love about you and why there is TEDR. I'd never heard the term restorative justice until meeting you. But even then, you were teaching about, I think I learned about restorative justice is, 20 years after I knew you. But I remember when I was in the military and I was in Japan, there was a criminal case that involved, I don't remember the exact details, but it's sort of like an enlisted guy went off a base, he was drinking, and there was an accident that resulted in the death of a child. And we're like, oh my God.
American
the legal system, I forget the words, I forget what they call it, but there was, what's it called?
A gaijin.
A gaijin.
Right.
It's
Japanese N-word against white people.
But it sort of captures the spirit of restorative justice. It wasn't the goal of putting this young man, he had made a mistake and he had resulted in a death, but putting him in prison for the rest of his life or whatever wasn't the solution. And so the family and the courts kind of worked on it. And when I think about TEDR, like you said about winning and losing, we're not going to be successful if we don't kind of break these categories of types of cases and use this technology, and we can, but not to win or lose, but sort of the Buddhist. I'm Catholic, and people say, "Are you Catholic?" I go, "Well, I'm a kind of Catholic Buddhist," right? But and those two don't necessarily often get put together. But if you can mix it, and I think that's what we're trying to do with TEDR. So let's pivot for a second, and on the next question I had for you, which is, how did you get into ADR? So we got a good understanding in your last answer about the law and why you didn't want to build your career. How did you discover ADR? What were your ambitions then? And how's it changed today?
Okay, well, as I say, I was so turned off. I went to work for the state attorney general after I graduated from law school. And then I went to the Army for 6 months, and I had to retake the bar after I got out of the Army for 6 months, active reserve duty. And then I decided I worked for 2 private law firms, Blue Ribbon, top of the line law firms, and corporate type of stuff. And I hated that. So in the meantime, I decided to go and become get a PhD in political science. And just by happenstance, I ended up at Northwestern in the program, law and politics program. A fantastic guy who was a lawyer and a political scientist. And he got me involved in this whole idea of law and politics. And I ended up at the University of Hawaii, was teaching law and politics, judicial politics, constitutional law, that kind of thing. And that was, I wrote about 4 books on that. And I was pretty, well established in political science discipline doing that. And I kind of saw that was kind of a dead end for me, that I could go on and do that for the next 40 years, but it was just, it wasn't going to go anywhere. I mean, what I want to do is change the way the whole judicial structure was set up, because I didn't like the way judges were, like lifetime appointments to the Supreme Court. That's ridiculous. How are you going to change that? Constitutional amendment? Well, good luck. So there was no way to go. I was kind of in a cul-de-sac. And I went into American government for about 6 years and wrote books on that from my perspective. And then I met one of my graduate students, happened to be a gorgeous lady, and I fell in love with her, and she was very brilliant. And it was she who came up with the idea. We were talking on politics, and she said, "Have you heard about mediation and alternative dispute resolution?" I said, "No, what's that?" And so it was she who got me interested in it. And this was, say, the mid-'70s. And I'd kind of come to an end of writing about American government. That was all I wanted, was the new Constitutional Convention. And yeah, forget about that. I mean, is that going to happen? Way up, I'm dead.
Don't wait for that one.
So anyway, so she had heard about this and got me to pay attention. So just about that time, in 1966, there was a conference in Minnesota called the Pound Conference, and it was on, quote, alternative dispute resolution. So why did a bunch of lawyers, law professors, judges, arbitrators, labor mediators, and people from the Federal Mediation Service, which was established in 1935 in the National Labor Relations Act, 1935, the National Mediation Service, to mediate between management and ownership and labor, come together and decide that they had to do something to reduce the tremendous reliance of Americans on the court system for resolution of all disputes. Well, it's because of the fantastic amount of backlog in the courts. The courts couldn't handle all of the people going in. Everybody, if you think back to when you were in grade school or high school, was there anything about debates? Did they teach you how to argue one side and another side and win? Was there a debate team in your high school? Was there a debate team in your college? Probably. Was there a negotiation course in your high school? A negotiation course in your college? Was there negotiation training? Learn how to negotiate, learn how to listen to another party and think of alternatives to resolve it. No, debate, argumentation, win and lose, it's drummed into your head ever since you were a kid. You talk about brainwashing, that's brainwashing.
Well, and, it's Catholicism being a product of the Catholic schools. And you think about divorce, here we are trying to make divorce more amicable. But from the time I came out through, college, because I went to Catholic college at Tulane, it's just, you're not supposed to get a divorce. Just don't get one, right? It's just, that ain't supposed to happen, right? But
Right.
We knew societally it's going to happen. And no one ever prepared us to communicate. They didn't even teach us about how to be married. We got a 1-week course on that if you went to pre-Cana, right? And so no wonder it's so mixed up as we try to get divorces today, right? Because
well, let me go back here. It's America. I mean, America is the most litigious society. Like, just the same as we are the most COVID-ridden society. We are also the most adversarial society. I'm not saying that they're linked. Although I think there is a link. But I think it's here's what most people don't know. America, after the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, when they had the Constitutional Convention and come up with the Constitution, all of its negotiated compromises between the North and the South, big states and small states. That's why we have the electoral college. But most people don't understand that the Constitution that we live under was the second government. It was actually a silent coup to get rid of the Articles of Confederation and to have this constitutional. The Constitutional Convention was not called. It was the convention to amend the Articles of Confederation. Well, that was a front. Actually, the people who wanted to hold the Constitutional Convention knew darn well they wanted to hold the form of government. They said they were meeting to amend the Articles of Confederation. Forget about it. They were there to set up a whole new form of government, a central form of government. And they did. But what you don't know is that the 38 people who decided on, came to that compromised constitution we now revere so, 55% of them were attorneys at the time.
Yeah.
And what form of government did they decide on? A legal document called the Constitution. And who was going to be the ultimate decider of what that Constitution meant? A Supreme Court made up entirely of lawyers. So this society from its beginning was legal and legalistic. And based on the common law in England, which was adversarial, which had been brought over to the colonies. And in a sense, all the states adopted English common law. You go into any law library today, now, of course, it's all online, but you look at all these books and, there's hundreds of thousands of books, all based on English common law, which was decided by judges in an adversarial system, in an advance from trial by combat to trial by combat in a courtroom instead of on a horse with a lance. So that's what you're brainwashed into. It's the adversarial system, individual fighting individual, win, lose, etc. So, okay, so all of a sudden, I'm in the University of Hawaii. I've gotten through my judicial politics phase. I've gotten through my American government phase. And I was looking for something else. And then this lady tells me, well, what about alternative truth resolution? So I started reading what they talked about at that town conference. And they had come up with a federal, at that time, Jimmy Carter was president. And his attorney general was from Georgia, actually from not far from where I live here in Alabama. His name was Griffith Bell.
I remember that, yeah.
And he was a very progressive attorney general of the United States. And he liked the idea of alternative truth resolution. And Congress had passed something in the 1970s called the Law Enforcement Assistance Act, or Law Enforcement Assistance Agency, LEAA, and they funded it very liberally. And one of the things they funded, and they set up as an agency in DC under the DOJ, was an experiment to do 3 different types of neighborhood justice centers, which would be alternative dispute resolution, alternative being to litigation, so that people could go directly into mediation without and being involved with
avoiding litigation
entirely
as a last resort if needed. You had a constitutional right for it, but this would be in front of it. Okay, I like it. Yeah,
right. And the main process that they were adopting was mediation. And mediation, in its traditional sense, if a third party will try to facilitate a solution to the conflict, where the parties themselves make the decision. Okay, that's what mediation is. The parties are empowered to decide for themselves what they think is a just result. So they both walk away winners. So we talk about win-win versus win-lose in the adversarial system. That really appealed to me. person, my
I
soul.
can see why. I can see why. So the utopia
Yeah,
of
yeah, and this lady I was working with, turned out to be my second wife, and she was, you know, she saw it too, and we really were impressed. So we decided to ask the University of Hawaii to fund a mediation training in at the University of Hawaii, and we were turned down by our chair. He wouldn't give us any money. The dean wouldn't give us any money. The Social Science Research Council wouldn't give us any money. So, I went to talk to the Chief Justice of the Hawaii Supreme Court, and David Richardson, and I tried to explain it to him. And I remember him kind of looking at me like I was some sort of, uh, QAnon person, coming from so far out that it was just beyond his belief. And he had this kind of look on his face, like, what are you, some kind of crazy man? That asking me to do something like this? Of course we're not. So I could see the courts weren't doing it for us, because it sounded like we're trying to take away their business. So, I understood immediately that was going to be a roadblock. So we went around. It took the summer because there was a semester system, and they paid through the summer. So we took a trip through the United States. We went to community boards in San Francisco, which was it still exists, by the way. Anybody wants to see what a real community mediation service looks like. San Francisco, they've been doing it for 40 years, and they've been commended by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, given many awards. They're still in existence. They've trained over 35,000, 40,000 mediators in San Francisco, and they're still doing great work in their 4 communities in which they were located. And then we went down to Venice Beach, California, LA, where they had a community mediation service that was also co-sponsored by LA Bar Association. And they were doing mediations in Venice Beach. And then we went to Atlanta, where they had something called the Neighborhood Justice Center. And that was actually, all their cases were demanded to them by the courts. And then we went up to New York, the Institution of Mediation and Conflict Resolution, where we met when we felt they were the best. And we met a trainer there who told us that he would be glad to come out and train our people and explain to us. And that's what we hired to come out to Hawaii. And where did we get the money from? My second wife and I, we had to take out a bank.
Self-funded, like our company's been. Yeah, I get it.
I self-funded, and we paid for the mediation training, for his airfare, and for his hotel, and everything else. And we made it a university-based community mediation service. And we did that experiment for a year. And that's when I really learned about mediation, being a mediator. And I was in the office a lot. I did a lot. I would say half of the mediations, we had 90% success rate. In our mediations. Where did we get the cases from? I went out and I was talking to people, and I went on radio shows, TV shows, we put all kinds of brochures out.
Too bad you didn't have YouTube TV at that time. You can touch millions of people, right?
Right. It was face to face pretty much, and manual. So actually, half of our cases, and in our talking before we went on, I mentioned it. Half of our cases were on the telephone.
Right. You said, you were doing ODR before video.
Well, electronic mediation, where you didn't see the person and their body language and the rest of it. I personally, even today, find the telephone to be an excellent way of in-person communication. I like email. I love the telephone. Zoom is fine, but the telephone is still a pretty darn good way of communicating.
Why do you think today, we're going to flip flop around here. Why do you think the attorneys, and even let's say, and since most mediators today are either former judges or attorneys, repurposed, for politically correct word. Why do they hate this? I mean, COVID has forced it on us. I mean, we've been evangelizing for a decade and nobody listened to us, but COVID has brought it full circle. What are your theories about there was a blog last night I took part of with one of the most respected guys in the ADR space, and he goes, do you want to go back when COVID's over, whenever that may be? Can we go back to the way it was? Why is it you can only do it face to face? Is it the theater of the court, or the actors of the court? Is that what it is, or why are they opposed to using the phone, using email? And that's why we came up with technology enhanced dispute resolution, not technology to replace humans, but why? I mean, you're a mature fellow, so you didn't grow up as a little kid with computers, but you've always adopted and you haven't been scared. Why do you think? Is it economic scare? Are they afraid it's going to take it away? Are they afraid they're going to blow up how they do it and take it away? What?
Okay, let me. I get your question. First of all, I'm ancient.
No, you're not. You're the new 45.
I'm the Yoda. Ancient wisdom. Believe me, when you get my age, you got to hit 80 before you really start to see the panorama of your life.
Okay.
If you live to be 80, you're lucky.
Right.
It's a luck in genes. That's pretty much it. Don't pat yourself on the back too much. You made it, good, and you get kind of this panorama. So I got a chance in the 80s to look back and really see the way this has evolved. So I have an answer to your question. And again, remember, all my best friends are lawyers.
Right.
All my best friends are, and they're great people. That when you get out of law school and you've been brainwashed into, quote, thinking like a lawyer, and I told you that one of the reasons that I got out of it was because all my friends in law school, they would say, let's go out to eat dinner at Becker. And I would say, okay, but let's not talk law. Anything but law. So what did we talk about? About their future, about what their goals were, what their values were, et cetera. And it was always about money, power, and status. So that's the answer to your question. So mediation cuts into their money, they think, power, because they're no longer the expert. If you're a mediator, you're not supposed to be an expert in anything more than mediation process. That's all you're supposed to be expert in, not the substance of hearings at all. I mediated cases where I didn't even understand what the heck they were arguing. Really, when they first come in and start using all the jargon. I remember one mediation I did to dog breeders. They were a partnership, and they broke up, and the fight was over who gets to pick bitch. The top female dog breeder.
Right.
And man, the jargon there is, economics, astrology, physics. A mediator doesn't have to even understand. In mediation, we're not interested in the truth, and we're not interested in the law. That you got to understand. So when you become a mediator, really get trained as a mediator, the law is irrelevant. The truth is irrelevant. Your goal is to help those people arrive at a satisfactory agreement, whatever it is. Can it be against the law? Yeah.
The two parties agree to it. Why not?
When I sit as a mediator in a mediation, the way it's set up is the party who brings the action to the mediation goes first, and then the party who didn't bring it but agreed to it goes second.
Mm-hmm.
If it's referred by a court, then the plaintiff goes first and the respondent goes second. It's a civil case. And as a mediator, I would sit there, and to me, it was like having the front row seat in a drama.
That's good. Theater, right?
Yeah, definitely. I talked with Dan French yesterday, and performance, is going on, and you are a spectator participant in participatory theater. So you listen to the first person talk, and they explain why they're so angry, how they got screwed, and how awful and vile the other person is, and they did this and they did that. You listen, and I told you that you're never trained in grade school or high school how to listen to somebody empathetic. You're trained to debate them and prove them right or wrong. Again, truth and falsity. Mediator, not. You have to gain the trust of each party as a mediator. That's really what you must do. So you got to be very empathetic with what they're saying. It's so they're going off on the other person. You're going, oh yeah, and he did this and he did that. And really, and you're letting them know you're hearing them. That's really what they want. They want to be heard. So you listen, so they feel they're heard. And then you turn and they're very persuasive. Then you go to the other party, and they go off on this other party, lying. They're the cheat. They didn't tell you this. They didn't tell you that happened. That's why I'm so ticked off. And they won't even admit that it happened. I got proof. Here's the proof. I take the proof. Put it on the table in front of me. I'm not going to pay attention to it. I don't know whether it's forged. I don't know if it's right. And I'm not a judge. I'm not there to evaluate the truth of their claim. But I'm going, oh, yeah. And it's like two totally different views of reality. Well, fortunately, as a mediator, you don't have to believe either of them. I was so glad being a mediator that I wasn't a judge. I wouldn't know who was telling the truth. And all the proof they're going to give, and to even it's sometimes they want to bring in witnesses. And we also had a rule in my mediation: no lawyers allowed.
Right.
Period. Keep them out of the darn place, and don't bring up the law. It's irrelevant. How in a divorce, etc. What's in the best interest of the child? The law says. Well, come on. I mean, who knows? I mean, they have to be satisfied that their concerns are part of an agreement as to what's in the best interest of the child. The law's not going to decide it. Judge doesn't know. The parents even don't know. They just have to be satisfied that their interests are in the agreement somehow. Whether or not they're going to be enforced or not, that depends. I'd say that depends on how honest they're being in the mediation with themselves as well as with the other party. So your job is just to help them negotiate a settlement that they're satisfied with that has their interests in it. That's really what the mediator is doing. So the law doesn't matter, and you're never going to find out any truth. And who knows what the truth is anyway? I mean, we're always hiding things from ourselves, aren't we? I mean, you know that. And so,
when we set out to do this morning, we said we're going to take about an hour. Just to give you a checkpoint, we're at about 45 minutes. And I love it, Dr. Becker, Ted. I love it because having known each other 35 years, this is bringing me back. It's reminding me why I got into it, because we sometimes forget why we got into it because we forgot where we came from. And you've hit on so many things. And when our viewers get a chance, that's what this channel's about. This channel's not about Settle Now or Zip Settle as products. These are just products and services. This is about a methodology of changing. And it's, I say, where, my mom was in the law. I know you were in the law and gave a lot to it. And as you've already said, your greatest friends and many of my greatest friends are in the law. These aren't bad people.
Right.
The system has evolved, society has changed, technology has come in, and they haven't figured out how to reblend it. And they haven't figured out a new economic model for it, right? Because hey, fairness, if you make an investment to go to law school and you have law school loans and you got an office building and you got employees and you got, you sort of fall into that trap or that way of doing things. So these are not bad people. And I remember in 2012 when I spoke at the Association of Conflict Resolution in New Orleans, and you came up, you go, hey, let's try to figure out how to get the lawyers to work with us. We don't want to get them mad at us around UPL, come after us. You're all practicing law, right? We wanted to figure out a way, and we've tried. And so, having said that, what I think this has convinced me is there's so much valuable stuff, and it just let's finish our break point. We got about 20 minutes left. Let's just kind of get to the history up to date, and then we'll, in another interview on another day, because we'll get everybody introduced to it. Hopefully they'll like it. If we don't get a lot of people watching this for a while, then we'll know we're not interesting or this is not good. But I think we're going to get a lot of interest. So having said that, you brought up negotiation. You said the word negotiation. I think you've mentioned the word neutral a few times. As I've watched mediation myself, from the way you taught us about the importance of neutrality, you brought up empathy, you brought up listening, you brought up the word negotiation. That is what's going on. And I want to say, if I've gotten beyond you, or if I've taken what you've given me and try to even further take it, you've heard the saying that 90% of conflict is emotions. And if you accept that, and I know you have a degree in psychology, and you accept the psychological aspect of conflict, and you agree that it is 90%, then that true concept of neutral, and you've heard of narrative mediation, and you've heard of transformative mediation, and all these styles. And there isn't just one style, right? It depends on what you encounter each time you walk in, right? And that's what I call, emotional intelligence. In the last decade of working with you, we can't fix it, the mediation aspect. And frankly, you hear me say, I don't even think I like the word mediation anymore, because I think it's just gotten ruined. Every time I hear Stanley, who runs Settle Now, which is our mediation product, I go, oh my God, Stanley, if I have to hear mediation anymore, I don't even want to hear it. And I think you're almost there. So taking, you got into it, you described why you got into it, and you got out of it for a little while, and then I reeled you back in, and where do we go from here? How do we take where we've been, where we are? How do we get to where we should be?
Okay, let me circle back before I get. So you asked me, the last question was, how come, we're not making headway? And the reason is because of the war. And the lawyers, they are making mediation bad, and more so all the time. They are co-opting and corrupting. I mean, you're saying, well, the word mediation. The word mediation means something. Period. Lexically and in dictionary, and the way it's practiced around the world, the way it's written about in millions of books, means something. It's a third party neutral, negotiating the rest of it. That's the word. The English language is that. I saw what it was in Japan the other day. They have their word for it. The Chinese have their word for it, but it's the same process. And lawyers, they first of all, they didn't charge. Most of the mediation that's done in the world is no charge. I mean, China, they don't charge mediation. The Chinese Communist Party have mediation committees in every single provincial town throughout the country. They're volunteers. They have to have certain kinds of qualities to be on the mediation committees. In Japan, it's kind of people who have kind of social esteem in the community. Nobody charges for mediation. The object is to help bring about social harmony. Lawyers aren't concerned with social harmony. They're concerned about getting their fee. I remember my father had a picture, a silhouette on the wall of his office in the waiting room, and a silhouette of Abraham Lincoln. It made me laugh. When I looked at it, first time I saw it, Abraham Lincoln says, "My fees must be paid." Thinking, God, I don't remember. Is that from the Gettysburg Address? I mean,
Right.
you laugh. Lincoln saying my fees must be paid. So that's what lawyers are mostly concerned about. Their fees must be paid, and mediations that they're doing. I know this is happening in Florida. I know it's happening in Alabama. I know it's happening in Georgia. I know it's happening in North Carolina. I'm not sure if it's happening nationwide, but these are the states where I know people doing it. And the lawyers are charging legal fees to mediate. Legal fees, the same billable hours. So, do they want to see free mediation, or even mediators charging less for, say, an e-negotiation or an electronic mediation on Zoom, charging maybe 1/10, a quarter of what they would charge as a lawyer to do the same thing? No. Just this, as I saw when I was doing the interview with Chief Justice of Hawaii Supreme Court. You just tell they felt threatened economically. I mean, I would say that, law is a business. I told you all my best friends are great guys that are all millionaires. I mean, they want to make money. And then second is the lawyer as mediator. When they start doing their mediation, they have this quote evaluative process. It's sort of like what you want to do with AI in mediation, which I'm not so sure I like. But I can see using it, softening. Lawyers, and particularly retired judges, are kind of using this process a lot in legal mediation, where the lawyers mediate. He'll be going and saying, well, or the judge will say, I can tell you from my 30 years of experience that your chances of getting what you're asking for are very, very small. Because on the basis of all the judgments that I know I've made and my fellow judges have made, you're not going to get that. Here's about what you're going to get. Well, mediators aren't supposed to be doing that.
Right. Amen.
Okay. But judges do it. Retired judges do it all the time. And lawyers do it all the time. And they kind of force people into settlements. Case done, money paid, case over. And that's what they want. So you don't want lawyers being your mediators. Being a lawyer, thinking like a lawyer, and thinking like a mediator are night and day. You can't have night at day, and it's sometimes you can. There's a really, really heavily overcast or an eclipse, and something like that. But it's rare. There are some lawyers who can be decent mediators, but it's a rare breed indeed. Lawyers just don't want to be mediators because they think like lawyers and they want to be paid like lawyers. And mediators don't think like lawyers, and many of them do it for free. I mean, the San Francisco Community Boards of 40,000 mediators haven't got a dime.
Right. Well, I mean, the whole concept of pro bono is a great concept. Okay. And, but I mean, it's almost like a justifying concept in that, okay, if you're in a big firm, you got to do so many hours of pro bono.
Yeah. Or so say
that. But yet we know 60-70% of the population can't even afford to participate in the law. So what percentage is pro bono? Now, if we're trying to build a business, which we've tried to build a business with Settle Now and now Zip Settle. I mean, unfortunately, like you experienced, you and Krista, Dr. Slayton, funded it out of your mortgage. I mean, you got to have some economic means. Now, you mentioned the different governments and Chinese governments specifically funding it. Somebody's paying the bills. It's almost like we have to have an airport. We have to have railroads. We have to have roads. We have to have infrastructure. They're almost looking at mediation is infrastructure. Court is infrastructure, right? The court loses money. I'll never forget, you and I've shared so much, and today's been so great, and we'll float this interview to on our channel, and we'll see if everybody else likes it. But as we wind this down, I'll never forget my lobbyist up in Tallahassee. I won't mention his name because I don't have his permission, but I'll try to do his accent, which is easy for me since I'm in the South. Hey, Dave. We can't afford to get no divorce. The court loses so much money. We probably it's only about $500 to file a divorce in Florida. But the court then inherits the responsibility to file all the paperwork, schedule the judge's time, schedule the magistrate's time, hearings, discovery, and the state loses money every case they touch. So the court isn't even funding itself, right? Because it's a cost to the taxpayers. And you mentioned these other countries that if they could reallocate the funds to better serve, one, it would make the lawyers mad because they'd be taking them out of it, and then they can't pay their law school loans and whatever. But when you got 60% of society that doesn't have access, don't you have a responsibility to give access? I'll conclude mine because this was an interview of you, not me. But you've heard me say that Uber and Lyft disrupted transportation.
Taxis.
Because we used to get in a taxi. You and I have taken many, many taxis over the day. If you didn't know the city, you didn't know if they took you the most direct way. You didn't know where you're going. You didn't know when you got in how much it would cost. Like you hope you have enough. You didn't know if they took credit cards because back in the old days, they had no ability to take credit cards on your phone or anything like that. If you would really trust somebody to hand a credit card, they might be making a little pencil rubbing of it up there and charge clothes. And it was a mystery.
Right.
Hasn't the law in resolving disputes become a mystery? Like
it's always been a mystery.
Well, but I mean, I don't know if it's not getting worse, right? But Uber and Lyft, Uber and Lyft came in to this, to the marketplace, and it was so disruptive that the first reaction that the taxi industry, transportation industry said, we're going to sue them because they don't have the right licenses, they don't have the right insurance, they don't have the right driver training. They're what? And then they started suing them, and they lost because they go, we're not a cab company. We're not a transportation company. We're a ride-sharing app, right? And so there wasn't the precedent, they couldn't establish it. Airbnb comes into hotels, or renting room business, right? They're not Hyatt or Hilton or Marriott. They don't have any buildings. They don't have any infrastructure. They don't have really any employees. Okay. So I'm your student. You have a few years on me in age, and you've given me infinite knowledge. But am I crazy to believe that we couldn't disrupt, or the legal industry needs to be disrupted?
Well, I mean, I think if you say that, I understand that you're kind of a techno person,
Mm-hmm.
and that means something to techno people, and it inspires them actually, and you, to being a disruptive, innovative, and of course, fits in with Hayek idea of constructive destruction in capitalism. So, it gets a lot of right-wing support intellectually that for capitalism to grow, industries have to be destroyed by new technologies. And, the horse and buggy was replaced by the automobile. That was a big transition. It's throughout history, no question. So I understand that works. But I think that once you say that, then you get the lawyers pissed off. I mean, hey, you're not going to disrupt my industry, which the legal profession is. It's an industry, and it's a very lucrative one. And the people in it don't want to lose the money, and they don't want to lose the power and the status that comes with it. They want to monopolize it. So you're coming in and saying, okay, let's take the e-negotiation tool of ZipSec. Now, I keep on seeing the Ken Nugent ads here in Georgia. One call does it all. That's all. I mean, how dishonest can you be? You know what that call does for you? You call Ken Nugent, and what they got are a whole bunch of people at telephones who are going to have questionnaires on the computer, and they're going to be asking you questions that are thinking about
monetize discovery to monetization of a potential dispute.
and they're going to cherry pick the best paying possibilities. And the rest of them, they're going to say, well, we don't think we can really handle this. Have you tried mediation? You can try this person. They'll usually send you to lawyers. They're not going to send you to the Georgia ODR system, where mediators are paid not nearly as much, or it sends you to a community mediation service. And they're not going to send you to Zip Settle, at least yet.
No.
Now, Zip Settle, the object there is to have a relatively low charge mediation availability after you've helped people kind of spill their guts in a negotiation for free. At least you're getting a service. When you're calling Ken Nugent, you're giving them the information about the accident you were in, how much your car was worth, and how much you get paid, and how much time you already lost, and how much the medical bills are. They're typing all of that in to see what kind of potential settlement they can get, because that's what they're really going for, not a litigation, or whether or not they got enough kind of cases to maybe put together a class action lawsuit against some industry or company. They're cherry picking, and most of the people who are going in, they're not going to take because there's not enough money in it for them. So what about those cases? Where do they go? Well, they're perfect for Zip Settle.
Oh, and I agree with you. I mean, we got to be careful. You've always advised me not to make the lawyers mad or the legal industry mad. So we got to be careful who we mention by name. We have a mega firm down here in Florida that's on TV a lot that does just that, right? And they do it probably better than anybody in the nation. And from an economic pace, and that you kind of got to be envious of them, okay? But that very same model, the lawyers at that level have said that this technology like Zip Settle probably best fits in class action kind of stuff.
Well, no, I think
I find that it's
it won't take. Morgan won't take 90%.
Hey, we gotta be careful who we mention. We don't want to make anybody mad, but
I'm not part of anything.
Right. I don't want to get sued, and you don't want to get sued because we have hard enough time economically, and these are good people. These are people, like you said.
They say it's for the people. They say they're for the people. I don't believe that they're for
the people. Well, that's another day and another discussion because we don't want to make. Mr. Morgan is from Kentucky. Mr. Morgan moved to Hawaii. Mr. Morgan moved to Florida, and Mr. Morgan is now retired in Hawaii, and we met. So we have to believe, John he has done the best within the system of which the system has evolved to not necessarily be able to serve everyone equally.
Well, then he's taking all these cases that they're turning away and say, why don't you try Zip Settle? It's in it. First of all, you can lay out your case for free and then see whether or not they can help you negotiate a settlement.
E-negotiation.
And
I think that, and this again wasn't as we end because we need to wind down and we'll go to another one on another day, but it's a great segue in point. We have a 2-product strategy, and even at the end of the second project or product, it kind of comes full circle back. Zip Settle is designed to help low cost. I hate the word pro bono in the sense that pro bono means there's no money. So we call it low bono, and we can try to serve. If they're not resolved there with e-negotiation and a very low fee using AI, you mentioned on the next video we'll get a little deeper, and I think it's neat how you look at AI, and you don't profess to even know it from a technology point of view, but you get it conceptually. Zip Settle uses AI, little human contact, to give the people, for the AI to be neutral, for lack of a better understanding. If we can't do it, we go to Settle Now. But Settle Now is meant for mediation, and we have tools. It's not just video conferencing. There's negotiation tools in mediation. If we can't resolve it there, they do have a constitutional right to go to litigation.
Right.
But we also know there's a mechanism in most states that if you go to litigation, they go back to mediation. And so maybe they'll come back. So we really, our dual strategy, and I guess, again, I don't want to talk about use our exchange to be a product endorsing exchange, but it is TEDR, okay? Your Ted Becker, technology, enhanced dispute resolution, right? TEDR TV. We really want to get our message out there that the methodology could change how you serve, the economics of how you serve, and you really have the potential, if you blend this, to serve your customers differently, more efficiently, and still have an economic gain out of it, right? We're not against economics.
Not only economic, just fun.
Exactly.
Well, peace of mind. That's what we're aiming. That's what mediators want. Each person to leave with a peace of mind. I mean, isn't there enough disturbance in this world? People need to have more peace of mind. What mediation is about, and that's what a good facilitated negotiation.
Well, all the people, and I talk too much and too often and often unfiltered. People say, Dave, you talk so fondly about our competitors. You and I both agree that Dr. Ernest Thiessen is one of the good guys in this business.
Yeah.
And his product, Smart Settle, is based on electronic negotiation.
Right.
And I admire him because his premise from his dissertation is if you use electronic negotiation, both parties can get 16 to 20% more than they would have settled for, right? Because it's, as you said, litigation and even mediation is sort of forcing you to settle instead of allowing you to settle and feel good about the settlement and actually getting a better settlement. So I have come.
Just paying legal fees.
Right. Amen.
Very high.
Right. Amen. Well, Ted and to everyone, Dr. Becker, thank you for the time today. Let's float this video. I think we're up to about, an hour 20, which is fine. If nobody listens, then that. But to me, this has been like a lecture, a participatory lecture. And once everybody gets to know you and the basic tenets behind TEDR, I hope they want to hear more. And this channel is an easy way for us to do that. And COVID has put us in a position to consider alternative ways that we've never ever considered. You agree?
Right, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and I'll reach back out. I'll send you an email today when this video or this interview is posted. You may not want to watch yourself because I don't really like to watch myself, but we hope other people do watch. How's that?
Yeah. Also, yesterday I had an interview with Dan French at University of Texas.
Right.
YouTube channel. I forget what it's called.
Right.
And we had a good chat too.
That's going to go live sometime this week or next?
Today, I think.
Oh, really? Awesome. I watched his inaugural show. He's kind of like a Bill Maher to me, so it'll be interesting to see the two of you blend your intellect with his humor and his intellect. Yes, a superior intellect. So, and Dan, as you know, has helped us out tremendously with our messaging. Right. So, all right. Well, thank you, Dr. Becker, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Pleasure, Dave.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.